This is the original take on skeletons in the closet, I guess. I'm going to read all the way down to verse 10, from starting in verse 1. Oh, Ezekiel, yeah. Helps if you're in the right book. Okay. The hand of Yahweh came upon me and brought me out in the spirit of Yahweh and set me down in the midst of the valley, and it was full of bones. Then he caused me to pass by them all around. Behold, there were very many in the open valley, and indeed, they were very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? So I answered, O Yahweh, Elohim, you know. Again he said to me, Prophesy to these bones, and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus says Yahweh, Elohim, to these bones, Surely I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. And I will put sinews on you, and bring flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and you shall live. Then you shall know that I am Yahweh. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I prophesied, there was a noise, and suddenly a rattling. And the bones came together, bone to bone. Indeed, as I looked, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them over, but there was no breath in them. And he said to me, Prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, Son of man, and say to the breath, Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe on these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath came into them, and they lived, and stood upon their feet, an exceedingly great army. That's an amazing story, isn't it? It's an amazing account. I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday and this morning, about what a great movie this would make. This would put science fiction to shame, you know. All the Indiana Jones things out the window, you know. And any of the mummy movies, it's gone. Nothing would compare to this. So, I don't know, every time I come back to this, I'm thinking about not so much skeletons in the closet, but things that we've let kind of wither or maybe even die, or as individuals, and how about as a church? Let's go to verse 1. The hand of Yahweh came upon me and brought me out in the spirit of Yahweh and set me down in the midst of the valley, and it was full of bones. Okay, my first thing there at the end is supposed to be, let him there, not let him be. So I'm off to a good start with all this typo stuff. But the bottom line is this, that it wasn't a place that Ezekiel just stumbled on. He wasn't just out for a walk one day and came into this valley and, oh man, look at all these bones. And at the same time, it's not someplace he planned to be. It might not even be someplace he wanted to be. But the actual fact is that he wasn't there on his own. Yahweh led him there. Yahweh took him there. In fact, he said, the Spirit of Yahweh brought me out and set me down in the midst of this valley, and it was full of bones. Sometimes Yahweh leads us to places that we would never imagine going to. We would never think about going there. We would never consider it. You know, we would never, I mean, obviously a great battle had taken place there. I didn't dig into that far to see the history of this, but obviously a great battle was there. That's why it's full of bones. But sometimes Yahweh leads us to places we had never thought about going, we had never planned on going, maybe we don't even want to go. But he sets us down in the midst of places, in the end, so that we can see what he sees. So that we can know him in a way we haven't known him before. Or maybe we had known it, but we had forgotten. Ezekiel, this is 37th chapter. He's seen quite a bit. He's spoken the word of Yahweh to Israel quite a bit. This isn't like the call to ministry for him. He's been at it for a while. And sometimes we just kind of, there are certain aspects of, Jen was talking about reaching out and, just everywhere and every time and seeking every day about boldness and about being able to minister to people, and it's always about that. But sometimes, statistically, the Barna Group did research on this, and I've read some of that. It's pretty interesting if you ever get a chance. But the longer you've been a believer, typically the fewer lost people you know. Because our tendency is to huddle together. Our tendency is to be together. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the body of Yeshua is partly for. It's about fellowship. It's about growing, being accountable. The whole iron sharpens iron thing. And that's good. But there is I don't want to use the word danger, but there is something that could happen. And that's, we just do that so much that we know fewer and fewer lost people. I always think of going to different places, and I wonder to myself, what if somebody from church sees me in there? Or somebody I know who knows I'm a pastor. What are they going to think if they see me in there? But I'm thinking, that place is probably full of lost people. See, we get nervous, we get worried. You see, my title is Bones into Armies. That's what he's doing. But the subtitle is Contagious Faith. It leads us back to that. I'm hoping everything leads us back to that. And it was a valley full of bones. And you know what? If you look at verse 2, he had them walk in and out through this whole valley and all these bones, and he checked them out, and they were very dry. What's the significance? There's no marrow left. There's nothing. These are just bones, and they're very dry, which means that it wouldn't be that much longer before they would just become dust. So they're very dry bones. They've been dead for a long time. And Yahweh's, he doesn't say this in these words, but I think this is the point, one of the points he's making to Ezekiel. Can these bones live? We're going to get to that in a moment. But Isaiah's response, we'll get to that also, his response indicates that, it's all up to Yahweh, but in the end, this is Yahweh's way of asking him and telling us, you can't do this without me. You can't do this without me. You know what? How many lost people today have been believers but have fallen out? They got discouraged. They got disappointed. Somebody hurt them. They were betrayed by a believer, who knows, whatever reason. It's not an excuse, but it's the facts. These things happen, and people drop out. They've had enough. I have people, they'll talk about, well, I don't feel like I have to go to a church as long as I'm fellowshipping with other believers. There's a measure of truth to that. Truth is that church doesn't save you. You don't become a believer by going to church. What was his name? Famous evangelist in the 20s and 30s. I can't remember him now. He used to play for the Cubs way back then, by the way. Anyway, he made a statement that said going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than going to a garage makes you a car. But what it does is it strengthens you. You hear the testimonies of other people and what they've been through and how they came through it, and you're strengthened, and you walk out of there feeling like, I can handle this. But maybe they've dropped out. Something has been dead in them for a long time. I have somebody like that in my family. And that's a burden. But you know what? Whatever is dead in there, I can't do anything about. But like I said before the prayer requests, well, I can't do it. I know a guy. I know somebody who can do something about it. I can't do it without him. We can't do it as a group without him. He brings us to these valleys. He brings us, it's a valley. You don't read about this stuff on mountains. It's all in valleys. And that's where he takes you. Sometimes you're in a valley place and you wonder, where are you, Lord? Where are you, Lord? You know, Yahweh, we're looking for you. Where are you, Yahweh? I can't hear you. When sometimes maybe it's, I can't hear you. I'm not hearing. I can't, we're just not listening. He brings us there to reveal to us more about himself and more of what he can do. Because why? You can't. He can. Somebody in my extended family has something going on and somebody's done something, and I'll tell them, look, I know a guy. That's my favorite go-to line. I know a guy. The fact is, I did know a guy. I don't even know who he is now, but I did know a guy. That's not the point. The point is Yahweh's that person. He's, I don't want to diminish him in any way. That's not what I'm meaning, but he is the fixer. He fixes. He repairs. He restores. He reconciles. He's done it over and over and over again with millions of people. Look, you were reconciled. You were restored, right? I never thought when I was younger and the things that I did, even though I knew it was wrong, I never thought I'd be doing what I've been doing for the last 50 plus years. That's Yahweh. He can do it, and he does do it. He will do it. He brings us to these valleys to reveal himself to us and to show us just what he can do. Let's look at verse 3. He said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? Is that a rhetorical question? Or he already knows the answer, so in a way it is. But on the other hand, he wants to know. So when I say that, makes it sound like Yahweh doesn't know what Ezekiel would be thinking. He does. He needs to hear Ezekiel say it. More than that, he needs Ezekiel to know that he can do it. Son of man, can these bones live? And you know what? It's not a test of theology. It's not a test of faithfulness. It's not a test of, obedience or anything like that. Really what it comes down to is a test of vision. Everything. I've been thinking about this. I'm not there yet, but I'm becoming convinced that everything's about vision. That's about vision. That is a vision. Everything we do comes back to vision. A lot of empty chairs. And even if everybody's here, there's still a lot of empty chairs. Or are they? In the book God's Smuggler, he had, I can't remember his name. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he was called to go to this mission school, but the thing about this school was they only sent missionaries to places your organized churches didn't send missionaries to. He couldn't get in right away, so he's staying in London. He met this guy. He had a plumbing business, I believe, but he had a storefront church. And he went there to preach. And when he preached, there was one guy there, and a room full of empty chairs. And his young protege said, when I preach, I want real people in those chairs. And he said, time and place, those are our own restrictions. Yahweh knows who's supposed to be in those chairs, and that's who I'm speaking to. So I'm with him. I'm speaking to you to lift you up and build you up and encourage you, challenge you, even convict you. But I'm here also to speak to the people that are supposed to be in those chairs. Call me strange, call me weird. That's okay. I am strange and weird. You know, it's one of the things I can easily embrace. But I believe it. It's a test of vision. And you know what? Ezekiel doesn't pretend to see life in these dry bones. He sees dry bones. He sees a valley. He says it. It's a valley and it was full of bones. That's what he sees. What do you see? And what do I see when we come and, you know, there's a handful or maybe 2 handfuls or whatever there is here? Not a lot. But what do you see and what do I see? And you get up and the kids go back to their class and then there's even more empty seats. You know? And my heart, I'm glad to see them getting instruction and training. But my mind is saying, no, don't go. Stay. He doesn't pretend to see it. He sees what he sees. He sees dry bones. We see empty chairs. It's okay. That's part of the test of vision. Yahweh's not asking you to pretend the chairs are full. Yahweh's not asking you to pretend that the valley's not full of dead, dry bones. That's not what he's asking us. He's asking us, can these bones live? That person that you see walking down the street and maybe you don't know if he's saved or not, but that's the thing, you don't know. And maybe, just maybe, there's some dry bones in there. Can those bones live? You know, Yahweh. Yeah, Yahweh knows. But Yahweh wants you to know. He wants you to know that he can do it. He wants you to know that you can do it through him. He's not asking you to pretend that the bones aren't dry and aren't very dry, that there's no life. That's what that means. There's no life there. I remember when Rachel had our Rachel Garza, had she had a valve replacement. And she had a lot of health problems before that. But she had a valve replacement. And they were bringing her back into the recovery room. And she coded. I mean, straight, flat-lined. The gal got on her and was doing compressions, and while the crash team was coming, and Rachel had a momentary comeback and freaking out because why is this person sitting on top of me, she said. That's what she told me later. She coded again. She died twice. Yahweh brought her back because she wasn't done. I don't know if Rachel knew it. Maybe he brought her back for me because she taught me an awful lot. I learned an awful lot caring for her. I learned an awful lot about suffering and never giving up and never quitting and always trusting and believing in Yahweh. I learned a lot from her. Imagine seeing her and knowing that happened and seeing her there and alive. Imagine that when you're walking down the street. Imagine that when you're praying for that prodigal that you know. Imagine that when Yahweh brings somebody in your path. And not everybody is totally convinced about the idea of divine appointments. To me, that just simply means Yahweh arranged things. Because if I go up to somebody totally randomly and I start ministering to them, did Yahweh arrange that? Or is that just me? Did Yahweh send them to that store at the exact same time that I was going to go to that store? End up in the same aisle at the exact same time? That chance? Is that random? Or is that Yahweh's hand? Yahweh's not asking you to pretend bones aren't dry or dead, because they are. What he is asking is if you believe the dry bones, whether they're in your life or somebody else's life, he's asking you if you can believe that they can live again. I used to tell people when they were about ready to give up on somebody, I would say, as long as there's life, there's hope. In other words, they're still breathing, there's still a chance. But the more I thought about this and read this week, I realized that even if they're not breathing, there's still a chance. Do you believe? And what about yourself? What about those things in your life that we set aside or we don't pay much attention to because we're so busy caring? And trust me, I know what it's like. You got, especially those of you that have kids and family, and you're taking care of, aging parents or whatever. We've been there too. Sometimes we get to the point where we have to set things aside in order to keep going. We put something on the back burner. You know what happens on the back burner? Well, it does get burnt. I was going to say nothing, but it does get burnt. And nothing usually happens. When we believe that dry bones in our own life can come and get alive again, and in the lives of others, things will happen. And Yahweh will use you to make sure they happen. Verse 4. Again he said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. It's like the young man with the plumbing guy who had his storefront church. When I preach, I want real people sitting there. But like the minister told him, the time and place are our restrictions, our constrictions. They're not Yahweh's. He's not burdened by those things. I don't know. It's a good thing I didn't buy 100 chairs for the church. I mean, I didn't buy them, but the church did, but I didn't order 100 chairs. This is 50. 50 chairs. There's, maybe on a Sabbath when everybody's here, there might be 25 to 30. That leaves 25 to 20 chairs empty. So you know what? I believe they're here. You may think I'm weird. You may think I'm strange. And as I said, that's okay. I think I'm weird and strange. But I'm speaking to them, the people that are supposed to be there. Yahweh knows who they are. See, because if I'm weird and strange about this, then Yahweh's weird and strange about this. So I'm in really good company. Prophesy to these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. O dry bones, hear what I got to tell you. It's not what it says. O dry bones, hear my story. It's a good story, but that's not what it says either. It says, hear the word of Yahweh. What does the word of Yahweh say? And speak it. That's very strange instructions. I mean, there could have been other things Yahweh could have told him to do, or Yahweh could have done it to show him what he can do. But he didn't. He needed Ezekiel to do it. He needed Ezekiel to see it. Yahweh needs you and I to do it. He needs you and I to see it and to believe that not just Yahweh can do it, but that Yahweh can do it through me. That was one of the sins of the children of Israel before they got to the promised land, before they went in and sent the spies. The spies came back, yeah, it's great. It's just like Yahweh said it is, but we can't go in. We're nothing. We're like, the people are giants, and they live in walled cities, and we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes. I don't ever want you to forget that part of the story. In our own eyes. Yahweh wants you to believe that you can do it. Israel had seen what Yahweh could do. He's seen them bring the most powerful nation in the world to its knees. He's seen Yahweh provide for them food through their journey in the wilderness, miraculously, just literally falling from the sky. So they knew that Yahweh could do it. What they didn't believe was that Yahweh could do it through them. And they failed, and they lost out, and then they ended up dying in the wilderness. I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for you. You have to believe that Yahweh can do it through you, that he will do it through you. I'll talk about this in a moment, but it's important for us to realize that it's Yahweh who breathes life into things. And it's Yahweh who takes the things that we can't fix, who takes the things that maybe we broke, but the things that are broken in our lives, the things that need to be fixed in our lives, we need to realize that Yahweh breathes life into those things. He breathes life into what we cannot fix. Remember it's the first thing Yeshua did after he saw the disciples and said, be at peace. What did he do? He breathed on them, didn't he? He just went. And they received the Holy Spirit. It's all about breath. It began with breath. Yahweh created man from the dust of the earth, but it was just laying there. Just this creation thing, but it's nothing because it's not breathing. It has no breath. And Yahweh breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. It's the only one of his creation that is a living soul. But he calls us to speak life to the lifeless. Calls us to speak life to the lifeless, whether it's in my own life, your life, the life of a loved one, the life of a prodigal, the life of a stranger who's maybe pouring out part of their story to you. He's calling us to speak life to the lifeless. Sometimes faith feels like, we read some of the things that Yahweh's called people to do in the scriptures, and we think, man, if you didn't know it was Yahweh, you would think that that's just really strange. That's just really strange. And sometimes faith just sounds foolish. Faith just sounds irrational sometimes. To people that don't have any, faith does sound and seem irrational. And it sounds foolish until that moment when Yahweh breathes life into it and it becomes alive. Hallelujah. Yahweh takes death and gives us life in its place, doesn't he? 8 through 10. As I looked, the sinews and the flesh came upon them, and skin covered them over. There was bodies. All over that valley, there were bodies. Where there had been dry bones, there were bodies. But that's all they were. They were just bodies laying there. But there was no breath in them. Another word for breath in the scripture is wind. And there came a sound like a mighty rushing wind. That's what it says in Acts chapter 2, right? Or maybe you could think of it or read it in this way. There came the sound of a mighty rushing breath. I don't think it was a wind. I think it was the breath. I think it was the breath of Yahweh breathing on them. Breathing life. I like to think, I'm going to do a message on this sometime. I already have the title. It's called Bad Breath. Yahweh breathed into man the breath of life. That was really good. Something happened along the way. Man got bad breath. Yeshua comes along, and he breathes on them. And then there's this mighty rushing breath, and everything explodes. kind of gave away half the message already, but they're not. Yahweh breathed on them. And he said to me, prophesy to the breath. Some would translate that the wind, but it's not wind in this passage, it's breath. Prophesy to the breath. Thus says Yahweh Elohim, come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe on these slain that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath came into them, and they lived and stood up on their feet, an exceedingly great army. I can tell you here's another great message idea. Moments that freak the devil out. The worst moments of the devil's life. This is one of them. He did not expect that to happen. He was not expecting that. He was not expecting Yeshua to rise from the dead either. An exceedingly great army. You know, Ezekiel speaks. Something happens. He prophesied. Muscle, tissue, bones came together. Skin covered them. Everything was there. Something, though, was missing. And what was it that was missing? No breath. There was no breath in them. Now, Ezekiel could have walked around and breathed on them, but that's not the same thing. See, we can build structures without the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. We can build structures without Spirit. And we can build programs without power. We can build bodies without breath. And that's not what I want to do. It's not what I want to be remembered for. It's not what I want to stand before Yahweh and say, this is it. And I'm sure you don't either. See, Yahweh doesn't resurrect. You see in parentheses, I have revive. It's the same thing. Yahweh doesn't resurrect or revive us to make us comfortable. He resurrects. He revives us to use us for his glory and to change the lives and transform people. And the Apostle Paul said, we have been given a ministry of reconciliation. He's not just talking to the apostles or the leaders of the church. He's talking to the body, the corporate body of Yeshua, the whole shebang. We have been given a ministry of reconciliation. That's what Yeshua did. He reconciled us back to Yahweh by his blood. Now, using that, we can reconcile people. 1, 10, enough to fill these seats. We can reconcile hundreds of people. How? I don't know how. I'm not worried about how. That's Yahweh's job. He just wants people to say, like Isaiah said. When Yahweh said, who shall go for us? Isaiah's like, ooh, 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 send me. Remember those guys in class? Ooh, ooh, ooh. You know, who's that guy on Welcome Back, Kotter? Remember that? Horshack. Ooh, ooh. Send me. There was that one guy or one gal on the front row had all the answers. They always knew it, always had their work done. I couldn't stand people like that. Now I want to be one of them. Ooh, ooh, Yahweh. Here am I. Here are we. Help us to have the strength, the grace, the wisdom, the boldness, and the courage to go out and revive dry bones.